It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and we're finally jumping into the holiday season of 2003, November 7th, 2003. And we got three big movies to look at this weekend, and these are some big movies. Two of them ended up being much bigger than I think anybody could have ever imagined, but the big new release that was supposed to be the film that everyone was going to remember this weekend, the third and final installment of the Matrix series, and that is, of course, The Matrix Revolutions. Yeah, everything that has a beginning should have an end, and that should have been the first Matrix movie, because, let's be honest, there was no reason why we needed Matrix sequels. I mean, the first film wrapped it up in a nice film, and yeah, the Matrix will have some cool stuff in it too, but by this point in the series, you started to realize that this was the reason why they should not have made this a trilogy. Um, in the explosive final chapter of the Matrix trilogy, Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity battle to defend Zion, the last real-world city, against the onslaught of the machines that have enslaved the human race. And now as Neo learns more about his heroic powers, including the ability to see the codes of things and the people, he faces the consequences of the choices made in The Matrix Reloaded. Not much more I can say about this one, except it's garbage. This is 100% freaking garbage. There is no reason for this to become a trilogy, and it's perfectly clear that the Wachowskis had no idea how to make this a proper trilogy. They saw how successful the first movie was, and Warner Brothers wanted more. They didn't have an idea for a trilogy, so they just said, screw it, just put some stuff on the wall and we'll see what happens. And like I said, The Matrix Reloaded at least had some redeemable qualities to it, the car chase scene, but as a sequel, but this is just a colossal misfire on so many levels, right down to the ending, serving no purpose whatsoever. There's nothing about this film that serves as an end to a great adventure. This isn't like Back to the Future Part 3, which was the last time they did a back-to-back sequel where they were wrapping everything up. No more movies after this. No, not in this movie. No. By the end of this, it was just like, thank God I don't have to deal with this anymore. And then nearly 20 years later, you get another movie, and that's just as bad too. Like, there's literally no reason to continue this series after the first movie. There's been nothing redeemable as far as a full film goes with any of these movies. Yeah, like I said, Reloaded had some cool stuff in it, and this one does have one scene in particular, the scene where the beginning of the final conflict with with Neo and Agent Smith, like when they're in the rain and all that. That was a cool scene. I'll give it that. But other than that, though, this thing can't even be decent. This is supposed to be the end of a trilogy, and there is nothing about this ending that feels serviceable, that feels like they want to wrap this up. It's clearly a ruse to make you be convinced that this was supposed to be the plan all along, that this was supposed to open the door up here. This is the equivalent of The Sopranos ending on a black screen, but The Sopranos was at least hoping that a movie was going to get made so they can wrap that up, but of course James Gandolfini died, and that pretty much changed everything there. This is bad on a number of levels, because they make the next movie, and it answers nothing of value whatsoever. Like, this can't even be decent. It has its head so far it's up its own ass, thinking that it's this high and mighty and god-tier adventure that everybody has been waiting for. Like, this is supposed to be the cinematic opus of our time, and they've done nothing past the first movie that is remotely worth being a trilogy. You should have stopped after the first film, and that's it. That should have been the end of this, but nope. This is a massive dumpster fire on so many levels. Avoid it like the plague. Avoid these sequels like the plague. And not surprisingly, the film did very poorly to at least close the door for the trilogy at that point. And then, like I said, they tried to continue on afterward with the fourth film, and that sucks too. And hey, we're getting another one too with the guy who directed it, with Drew Goddard. Yeah, good director. Have no reason to believe that movie's going to change anything that I've said before. Like, this first film should have been just one film, and that's it. Plain and simple. So that's The Matrix Revolutions, the film that everyone thought at Warner Brothers that everyone was going to be talking about. And then we'll throw this other movie out there on the same weekend, too. Clearly it won't have the lasting legacy that The Matrix Revolutions will. That's Will Ferrell and Elf. As you can see, now we're starting to get into some of the good stuff that came out this weekend. And we have one of the two Christmas movies that went on to become classics in their own rights. And it's interesting to think about Elf for a second here, because you look at the budget, $33 million doesn't seem like it's that much that this film can't make it back on. I mean, especially when you also consider that, it's a Christmas movie, and the next couple of weeks, everyone's going to be rushing out to the theaters to see the newest big family film, and there was a lot of risk with this particular film, specifically with the leading star, Will Ferrell. It was his first big film as the leading man after leaving Saturday Night Live for 7 years and having his breakout role earlier in the year in the comedy Old School, where he had a supporting role. But here, it's his puppy right here. He's the leading guy on there. He's all over the posters. He's the main guy on the main credits. So there was a lot of high expectations for him to not only succeed with this film, but, prove that, hey, he's got a future in film. And sure enough, he went on to have a very successful film career starting with this. I mean, there was a point between 2003 and 2007 where he really was a top draw at the box office. Maybe even longer than that, too, 2008, because I keep forgetting that, Semi-Pro was not a big hit, but Step Brothers was a big hit, although I do approve of Semi-Pro more than Step Brothers. Probably one of the few things I could say, probably one of the few controversies about Will Ferrell's movies in general. But we'll eventually get to those ones when we get to 2008, of course. But the story here is that you have Will Ferrell as Buddy, a human raised by Santa's elves who learns about his origins and heads to New York City to meet his biological father, played by James Caan. And, James Caan is not in the Christmas spirit, and, of course, Will Ferrell is filled with the Christmas spirit. He ends up falling in love with Zooey Deschanel. James Caan's wife is Mary Steenburgen. Santa's played by Ed Asner, and Bob Newhart is his elf father. And this is directed by Jon Favreau, and this was also a gamble for him, because this is his first time tackling a big project like this after Swingers and Made, and the results have spoken for themselves. Not only did this film become a massive hit when it came out, it has become a Christmas classic in many, many ways, spawning musicals, which actually led to a stop-motion animated spin-off movie on NBC a couple years ago, which that's a really underrated movie. It has Jim Parsons as the voice of Buddy in there. Highly recommend checking that out, especially if you love the original Elf. And at times, Elf can seem like it may go over the edge because the character can be annoying at times, but he's a kid at heart. I mean, this is a guy that has lived his entire life in the North Pole. He doesn't know how most humans act in the real world. And the film does a good job of keeping the tones, keeping it at an even pace where Will Ferrell isn't going over the top insane for no particular reason. He's doing it because he doesn't know any better. He's been stuck in a place where he could be a kid for most of his life, and now he's got to come to the real world and realize that he has to become an adult. And I love the way that the film translates that. And also, James Caan, this curmudgeon, has to learn to find the kid in himself again. And it's a really good movie. It's a fun film overall. The comedy can be really funny, and there's a good cast involved in here. And it was my introduction to Zooey Deschanel, who I've always been a fan of. Not only is she a good actress, but the girl can sing. I mean, this is a film where you realize this is why Zooey Deschanel is such a great actress, a great personality in general, because she's a great actress. She can sing and that's always great when you can both act and sing really well. And case in point here, but her chemistry with Will Ferrell works well enough that the film really does have that sentimentation as a Christmas classic. And yeah, in a time when there wasn't Christmas, it's very hard to get a Christmas classic of this caliber anymore. We've had movies where they received well, have had lasting legacies throughout television over the last couple of years, including, like the criminally underrated Arthur Christmas. Then there's been times when they tried to make hits out of his Christmas classics and hasn't worked out quite well, but you still see him playing on TV every year, like Fred Claus, Four Christmases, Christmas with the Cranks. But this is one where, in the last 20 years, this is the one that has been played on TV the most. It's the one that's been hailed as one of the great Christmas movies of all time. And it's kind of hard not to see why. It does everything right. It never goes over the boundaries where it can get really annoying really fast. It's a perfectly even balanced film. I mean, what more can I say, man? Elf is a classic film. I can't recommend it enough. Speaking of Christmas classics, let's go ahead and take a look at the last one we have here, which is a Christmas classic in its own right, and that is Love Actually. I mean, a movie where just it feels like a chick flick. It feels like a film that nobody outside of the female target audience could really get into. But it's a film that appeals to everybody. I mean, this is a film that is just so perfectly handled in the way that it does tell the story. You essentially have a series of little, and it's kind of like an anthology, sort of, but you have a cast that includes some of the biggest names around. I mean, let me just read the names off of here. Hugh Grant, Liam Neeson, Colin Firth, Laura Linney, Emma Thompson, Alan Rickman, Keira Knightley, Martine McCutcheon, Bill Nighy, Rowan Atkinson. That's just some of the names on here. There's names on here that I didn't even mention that are notable names, like Chiwetel Ejiofor, Andrew Lincoln, why can't I remember his name from The Walking Dead? Ah, God. I don't want to have to look it up. I don't want to have to look it up. Come on. It's gonna come in there, damn it. Rick Grimes. Good Lord. I knew the name. I just couldn't remember it. Yeah, he's in here too. Who else is in here? Liam Neeson's son, the girl that she falls in love with is actually Olivia Olsen from Phineas and Ferb. But you also have you've got January Jones, Alicia Cuthbert, Ivana Milcevic, Shannon Elizabeth, Martin Freeman. Did I mention Rowan Atkinson? No, I didn't. Rowan Atkinson's in here, too. He doesn't have a whole lot to do, but his one scene is memorable. Rodrigo Santoro, Xerxes from 300 is in here. Thomas Sangster, Liam Neeson's kid. You've seen him in a bunch of stuff. He's Ferb on Phineas and Ferb. He's also in Game of Thrones. He's in the Maze Runner movie. He's Billy Bob Thornton. There's just a phenomenal cast involved in this movie. I haven't even gotten to the actual plot of the film, which, like I said, it's an anthology film, kind of, where you delve into different aspects of love as shown through 10 separate stories, including a variety of individuals, many of them who are interlinked as the plot progresses. It begins 5 weeks before Christmas, as it's played out in a weekly countdown until the holiday, followed by an epilogue that takes place in the new year. And you could say that this kind of helped to launch the ensemble romantic comedies that led us to the lesser ones, like the Gary Marshall ones, Valentine's Day, New Year's Eve, Mother's Day, but unlike those pieces of shit, this is actually a smartly written, well-acted, and overall very romantic comedy. I mean, the ensemble cast in here just works so well together. All the chemistries and the stories that they have here are all perfectly handled very well. They don't fall into the typical romantic comedy cliches, and when they do, it's written very well. And that's what you get when you have a guy like Richard Curtis involved here. This is a guy that made great stuff like Four Weddings and a Funeral, Bridget Jones's Diary, Notting Hill. This is a film that is just smartly written, well made, well acted, very believable. It could have easily been a disappointment. It could have easily been a film that just falls apart right from the get-go because there's just too many people getting involved in here. But when you have a talented writer like Richard Curtis, he keeps the chemistries all together. He keeps the balance together. It never feels like one story is going overboard. Everything just seems perfectly fit. And you end up being very satisfied with what you see in the film. It's a beautifully made film. It's a great movie you watch at Christmas time. Even at Valentine's Day, people watch it at Valentine's Day. I mean, yeah, I could even see that. It's a film that really, it's made specifically for Christmas time, but you could watch it at any point in the year, and you would find so much value to it, regardless of what time of the year you watch it. I mean, what can I say? Hugh Grant said it best in the beginning of the film. Love Actually is all around, and all around, Love Actually is a really damn good movie. I don't think I need to say much more about it. Give it a chance. And so, with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time, we'll take a look at Russell Crowe and Peter Weir's Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World. Looney Tunes back in action. 7 years prior to this, Space Jam came out the same weekend. Was a big hit. This one, not so much. That doesn't mean the movie is bad. We'll talk more about that when we get to that one. And also the documentary Tupac Resurrection. So we'll take a look at those three films next time around. We're heading into the final weeks of 2003. So if you want to see more of these videos, if you like what you saw, please hit the like and subscribe button. Take a look at some of the videos we've done before. Check out the playlist with the previous episode. And I'll see you guys next time for the next episode. Thank you so much for watching. And until then, take care.